What happens when you get a second chance at life only to realize your greatest victory was actually letting your worst enemy win? Standing in my bedroom, watching my fiancé pack his bags to leave me for his ex-girlfriend. I did the unthinkable. I handed him his coat. Death isn't a bright light or a sudden peaceful fade to black. For me, it was the sterile, suffocating smell of bleach in room 412 of the cardiac ward. At Cedars-Sinai, it was the rhythmic, mocking beat of a heart monitor that was slowing down entirely too fast for a 34-year-old woman. But most of all, my death was defined by the empty plastic chair beside my bed. Declan wasn't there. My husband of 10 years couldn't make it to the hospital as my heart gave out from a decade of chronic stress, betrayal, and financial ruin. He was busy. Sienna Cole, his best friend and former ex-girlfriend, had called him crying about a flat tire on the Pacific Coast highway. So while my organs shut down, he was playing her knight in shining armor, just as he always did. In my final moments of that agonizing first life, I didn't pray for salvation. I didn't pray for peace. I prayed for a time machine. I prayed for the chance to go back to the exact moment I ruined my own life by begging a mediocre man to love me. Then the monitor flatlined, the darkness rushed in, and then I gasped, my lungs filling not with the recycled air of a hospital, but with the crisp lavender-scented breeze of my own master bedroom. My eyes flew open. I wasn't in a hospital gown. I was wearing my silk law perla robe. I was standing on the plush cream-colored rug of my penthouse in San Francisco. My hands, trembling violently, reached up to touch my face. The skin was firm, youthful, unmarked by the deep lines of stress that had defined my 30s. Sophia, are you even listening to me? The voice sent a violent electric shock down my spine. I turned slowly. There he was, Declan Mercer, 30 years old, devastatingly handsome with his tousled sandy hair and pleading hazel eyes, standing beside our bed and frantically throwing designer clothes into his Louis Vuitton duffel bag, a bag I had bought him for his birthday. The date on the digital clock on my nightstand read October 14th. It was the day before our wedding. A wave of dizziness washed over me as the memories crashed into my conscious mind. I knew exactly what was happening. This was the moment. In my past life, this was the night. Sienna called Declan in hysterics, threatening to do something drastic if he went through with the wedding. In that previous life, I had fallen to my knees. I had sobbed, blocked the bedroom door, and begged him to choose me. I had guilt him, leveraging the hundreds of thousands of dollars my family had poured into the wedding until he reluctantly unpacked his bag and stayed. We got married the next day. It was the biggest mistake of my existence. He resented me from the moment we said I do, punishing me for keeping him from his true love while happily draining my trust fund and the income from my successful tech PR firm to fund his extravagant lifestyle. Sophia, please, don't look at me like that, Declan said, zipping the bag with an aggressive tug. Sienna is in a really dark place. She just called me from her apartment in the Mission District. She's talking crazy, saying she can't live in a world where I belong to someone else. I just need to go over there and talk her down. I promise I'll be back before the rehearsal dinner tomorrow. He was lying. I knew it now with the crystalline clarity of a woman who had literally died from his lies. He wasn't going to talk her down. They were going to sleep together. They were going to hold each other and cry about how tragic their situation was, casting me as the wicked witch who was forcing him down the aisle. With my deep pockets, he paused, bracing himself. He was waiting for the tears. He was waiting for the desperate, pathetic Sophia to throw herself at his feet. I looked at him, really looked at him, without the blinders of desperate love. All I saw was a selfish, weak, opportunistic narcissist playing a part. The panic and residual trauma of my death vanished, replaced by a cold, magnificent calm. Okay, I said. Quietly, Declan froze, his hand still hovering over the handles of his duffel. Big. He blinked, clearly thrown off the script he had rehearsed in his head. Okay, wait. What do you mean, okay? I walked over to the mahogany closet, reached inside, and pulled out his heavy wool overcoat. I draped it over my arm and handed it to him. I mean, you should go to her, I said, my voice shockingly steady. If she needs you that desperately, you shouldn't keep her waiting. Declan stared at me as if I had suddenly grown a second head. Sophia, I'm just going to make sure she's safe. I'm not. I'm still marrying you tomorrow. No, you're not, I replied, stepping back and crossing my arms. You're clearly torn, Declan, and I deserve a man who is absolutely certain about me. If you walk out that door to go to Siena tonight, you don't need to come back. You're canceling the wedding. His voice pitched up in panic. He hadn't expected this. Declan liked having his cake and eating it, too. He liked the safety of my wealth and the dangerous allure of Siena's instability. I'm freeing you, I corrected softly, playing the magnanimous martyr perfectly. Go be with your soulmate, Declan. I won't stand in the way of true love. He stood there for a long, agonizing minute. I could practically see the gears turning in his head. He was doing the math. On one hand, he had the wedding of the century tomorrow, entirely paid for. On the other hand, Siena was offering him the ultimate ego boost, a woman literally threatening to end it all because she loved him so much. His narcissism won. It always did. I never meant to hurt you, Sophia, he whispered, adopting a painfully fake tone of tragic heroism. You're an amazing woman, but she needs me. I know, I smiled, a genuine, terrifying smile. Goodbye, Declan. He slung the bag over his shoulder and walked out of the bedroom. A minute later, I heard the heavy oak front door of the penthouse click shut. I stood in the silence for a moment, letting the reality of my rebirth settle into my bones. I was alive. I was 30 again. I was unmarried, and I had just cut the cancer out of my life before it could metastasize. I walked over to the nightstand, picked up my phone, and began to dial. I had a wedding to dismantle and a financial empire to protect. The first call was to my wedding planner, a fiercely efficient woman named Beatrice Hayes. It was 11:30 p.m., but Beatrice was a professional who charged a premium for 24/7 access during wedding week. Sophia, darling, tell me, you aren't stressing about the floral arrangements again, Beatrice answered, her voice crisp. Beatrice, the wedding is off. I said, Declan has left. There was a 3-second pause on the line. Beatrice didn't gasp or offer empty. Condolences. This was why I hired her. Understood. What are my instructions? Cancel the caterer, cancel the string, a quartet, and contact the management at the Fairmont Hotel. The reception is terminated. I want you to leverage every clause in those contracts to recoup whatever deposits you can. Keep your full fee, of course. Tomorrow morning I want an email drafted to the guest list. Consider it done, Beatrice said. Smoothly. And the honeymoon? Cancel the flights to Santorini, but keep the villa. Reservation. I think I'll take a solo vacation. After hanging up, I poured myself a generous glass of Cabernet and opened my laptop. This was where the real work began. In my previous life, I had been incredibly naive about finances. Because I loved Declan, I had added him to my secondary checking accounts, gave him an Amex Platinum card tied to my credit line, and even co-signed the lease on his ridiculous luxury SUV. Not this time. I logged into my banking portal. With a few swift, merciless clicks, I froze the joint checking account. I transferred the balance, every single cent of which I had deposited into my private locked savings account. I logged into American Express and reported the platinum card in Declan's name as lost, permanently canceling the authorized user status. Then I drafted a quick, airtight email to my lawyer, Harrison Montgomery. Harrison, the wedding is canceled. Declan Mercer is no longer permitted on the premises of the penthouse. As the sole owner of the property, I need a formal eviction notice drafted and sent to him immediately for whatever legal foothold he thinks he has. Furthermore, I need to legally separate any remaining liabilities tied to his name. By 3:00 a.m., my financial fortress was secure. Declan Mercer was practically a ghost in my ledger. The next morning, the fallout began. I woke up to 74 missed calls. Most were from Declan, but a fair amount were from his mother, Patricia Mercer, a woman who had treated me like a walking ATM for the better part of 3 years. I ignored them all, silencing my phone and ordering an extravagant room service style breakfast to my own apartment. While I ate my smoked salmon eggs Benedict, I checked Instagram. Sienna Cole had already posted. It was a black and white photo of 2 hands intertwined over a messy coffee shop table. The caption read, "The universe makes no mistakes. Sometimes true love requires walking through the storm to find the sunshine. We're doing this our way. Number. Elopement number, soulmates number. Reunited." I literally laughed out loud, nearly choking on my mimosa. They were eloping. Of course they were. Declan, high on the drama of the night and wanting to prove his devotion to Sienna, had likely driven them straight to a boutique hotel in Carmel by the Sea to plan a quick courthouse wedding. In his mind, he was a romantic hero who had forsaken a life of hollow luxury for true, passionate love. But what Declan had conveniently forgotten or simply willfully ignored was that his life of hollow luxury was entirely funded by me. He made a modest salary as a mid-level account manager at a logistics firm. He wore Brioni suits I bought him. He drove a Porsche Macan I leased for him. Sienna, a part-time yoga instructor who spent more time curating her aesthetic than working thought she had, successfully stolen a wealthy, high society prince. She didn't know she had just eloped with a man whose net worth was currently hovering around $400. At 11 a.m., the first domino fell. My phone buzzed. It was an automated text from American Express. Alert, a charge of $1,250 at Laubridge Carmel was declined on card, ending in 4091. I smiled, taking a sip of my coffee. Oh, to be a fly on the wall in that hotel lobby. A minute later, Declan called. I let it ring until the last second. Before answering, my tone painfully cheerful. Hello, Declan. Sophia, thank God, he breathed, sounding incredibly stressed. I could hear hushed, frantic whispering in the background. Listen, I know things are tense, and I'm sorry about how everything went down. But there's a glitch with the bank. My Amex is declining, and the joint debit card is frozen. I'm standing at the front desk of this hotel, and it's really embarrassing. Can you log in and authorize the transaction? The sheer, unadulterated audacity of the man was breathtaking. He was trying to use my money to check into a luxury hotel to elope with his ex-girlfriend. Oh, Declan, I sighed, infusing my voice with mock sympathy. There's no glitch. I closed the accounts. Silence hung heavy on the line. Then you what? I closed the joint account, and I canceled your Amex. I explained slowly, as if talking to a toddler. We aren't getting married anymore. Naturally, our finances are now separate, but my money is in that account, he sputtered. Your money? I asked innocently. Declan, you haven't deposited a paycheck into that account in 8 months. You told me you needed your salary to pay off your student loans. So I've been covering 100% of our living expenses. Every dime in that joint account was mine. So I took it back. You can't do this, he practically yelled. I'm in Carmel, Sophia. Sienna and I are trying to check in, and I have nothing. Well, you have true love, Declan, I reminded him sweetly. And isn't that worth more than a luxury? Sweet, enjoy your elopement. Oh, and my lawyer will be in touch about the keys to my Porsche. I expect it parked back in my garage by Monday, or I'll report it stolen. I hung up and blocked his number. Revenge, I was quickly learning, didn't require screaming matches or thrown vases. Sometimes revenge was simply stepping out of the way and letting gravity do the work. Declan and Sienna were about to find out exactly how heavy the real world was when I wasn't there to hold it up for them. Their rush to the altar to spite me was going to bind them together in a nightmare of poverty and resentment. Their quick romantic elopement was the trap, and they had just gleefully locked the cage from the inside. The beauty of a solo honeymoon is the absolute silence. I spent 2 weeks in a Santorini villa that was supposed to be our bridal suite, drinking Assyrtiko wine on the terrace and watching the Aegean sea swallow the sun. I didn't cry. I had already done all my crying in a past life on a hospital bed, dying of a broken heart. Now, every breath of salty air felt like a victory lap while I was getting deep tissue massages and eating fresh seafood. Declan and Sienna were experiencing the brutal, unromantic reality of their choices. I returned to San Francisco in early November, refreshed and ready to throw myself into my PR firm, my lawyer, Harrison. Montgomery had been busy. The Porsche McCung had been recovered. Declan had actually left it in a public parking garage in Monterey, racking up daily fees because he couldn't afford to put gas in it to drive it back. I sold it the next day and poured the cash directly into a high-yield investment account. My first morning back in the office, my assistant buzzed my intercom. Sophia, I have a Patricia Mercer online. 1. She's called 4 times. She sounds agitated. I smiled, leaning back in my leather chair. Put her through, Rachel. Sophia, what on earth is going on? Patricia's shrill voice exploded through the speakerphone. Before I even said hello, Declan's mother had always possessed a terrifying sense of entitlement. In my previous life, she had drained my patience and my bank account constantly, asking for loans to cover her country club dues and home renovations. Good morning, Patricia, I replied coolly. I assume you've heard the news. Declan and I are no longer engaged. I heard he eloped with that dreadlocked yoga instructor. She shrieked. But that is no excuse for you to cut off my supplemental credit card. Sophia, I was at Neiman Marcus yesterday and my card was declined in front of the girls. You have any idea how humiliating that was? I actually laughed. It bubbled up from my chest, sharp and genuine. Patricia, your son ran off with his ex-girlfriend the night before our wedding. Did you honestly expect me to keep funding your shopping sprees? You're punishing me for his mistakes. She wailed, her tone shifting from aggressive to a pathetic whine. You. No, Declan is confused. He's a romantic. He'll come to his senses. But in the meantime, I have bills. Sophia, you promised to take care of this family. I promised to take care of my husband. I corrected her, my voice dropping to a deadly quiet register. I have no husband. Therefore, I have no financial obligations to the Mercer family. Lose my number, Patricia, or my next call will be to Harrison to draft a harassment suit. I hung up. The severance was complete. Over the next few months, the San Francisco rumor mill did my work for me. Our mutual acquaintances were more than happy to feed me the glorious, tragic details of the newlyweds' downward spiral without my money propping up his illusion of success. Declan's reality hit Sienna like a freight train. His salary as a mid-level manager at a freight logistics company was roughly $65,000 a year. In San Francisco, that was barely enough to survive, let alone maintain the lifestyle Sienna thought she had secured. They couldn't afford a luxury apartment in the city. With Declan's credit maxed out from the loans he had secretly taken in his own name to buy her an engagement ring to replace the one I took back, no reputable landlord would take them. They ended up renting a dark, damp one-bedroom basement apartment in Daly City, right next to the BART train tracks. Sienna's Instagram aesthetic shifted drastically. The glamorous champagne toasts and boutique hotel geotech vanished. She tried to pivot to a minimalist bohemian love theme, posting pictures of cheap homemade dinners and moody shots of the fog, but the cracks were showing. Her captions grew passive-aggressive. Real love is hard work. Sometimes it means sacrificing comfort for connection. Number growing pains. Number. Reality check. The romance had violently evaporated the moment the bills arrived. Sienna, who had fancied herself the tragic heroine, winning back her prince, realized the prince was actually a broke, unmotivated man who expected her to cook, clean, and contribute to rent while he sulked about. Losing his corner office access at my firm, their arguments became public. A former colleague of mine witnessed them, screaming at each other in the aisle of a Trader Joe's over the price of organic chicken breasts. Declan looked exhausted and disheveled, wearing a faded college hoodie instead of his custom-tailored suits. Sienna looked furious, her once glowing aura replaced by deep, resentful exhaustion. The trap had snapped completely shut. They were tethered to each other by a legally binding document, drowning in debt and suffocating under the weight of their own mutual resentment. And the best part? I didn't have to lift a single finger to destroy them. I just let them have exactly what they asked for. The implosion happened faster than even I anticipated. By April, exactly 6 months after their dramatic, impulsive elopement, the fairy tale officially ended in a sterile county courthouse. Sienna filed for divorce. She had hit her breaking point when Declan's car, a beat-up 15-year-old Honda Civic he had bought on a terrible financing plan after I took back the Porsche, was repossessed in the middle of the night. Unable to get to the suburban yoga studio where she taught, she lost her primary source of income. In her mind, filing for divorce was her escape hatch. Sienna was banking on the delusion that, because they were legally married, she would be entitled to spousal support or a payout. She hired a cheap, aggressive lawyer named Gregory Finch, hoping to squeeze blood from a stone. But California is a community property state. That means assets acquired during the marriage are split evenly, but it also means debts acquired during the marriage are split evenly. During their 6 months of wedded misery, Declan had desperately tried to keep Sienna happy, to placate her constant complaining about their living situation. He had taken out high-interest personal loans and maxed out 3 new credit cards just to pay their rent and buy her apology gifts. He had racked up nearly $40,000 in marital debt in half a year because Sienna had no assets and they had no prenup. The judge didn't award her alimony. Instead, the judge awarded her exactly half of Declan's newly acquired crippling debt. When the gavel fell, Sienna didn't walk away a wealthy, tragically wronged divorcee. She walked away legally responsible for $20,000 of high-interest, unsecured debt with no job, no savings, and a trash credit score. The immediate fallout was catastrophic because as we're breaking their Daly City lease early, the landlord sued them for the remaining balance. They couldn't pay it. The eviction went on both of their permanent records. They were quite literally out on the street. Sienna ended up moving back to Oregon to sleep on her sister's couch, her tail firmly tucked between her legs. Her Instagram was quietly deleted. As for Declan, he hit rock bottom on a rainy Tuesday afternoon in May. I was walking out of my office building on Montgomery Street, checking an email from a new, high-profile tech client when a figure stepped out from the shadow of the awning. Sophia. I stopped. I barely recognized him. Declan was soaked from the drizzle, wearing a wrinkled suit, that hung loosely on his shrinking frame. He looked 10 years older. The arrogant, charming sparkle in his hazel eyes was entirely gone, replaced by a hollow, desperate panic. He looked like a man who had stared into the abyss and realized the abyss didn't want him either. "Declan," I said, my voice completely devoid of emotion. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel pity. I felt absolutely nothing. "I messed up." He choked out, taking a step toward me. He raised his hands, shaking slightly. "Sophia, God, I made the biggest mistake of my life. She ruined me. Sienna? She took everything. She manipulated me." She stopped. I cut him off, the single word echoing sharply against the concrete building. He froze, his mouth hanging open. "Sienna didn't ruin you, Declan," I said smoothly, looking him dead in the eye. "You ruined yourself. You chose her. You chose to walk out that door. You thought you could have my money and her adoration, and you found out you actually have nothing to offer either of us." "I'm homeless, Sophia," he whispered, a tear finally spilling over his eyelashes, mingling with the rain on his cheek. "I'm sleeping in my coworker's garage. My mother won't even speak to me because the debt collectors are calling her house. Please, I know you still love me. I know I hurt you, but we can fix this. I'll do anything. Just help me." It was the exact speech I had given him in my past life, begging him to stay. The irony was so exquisite, it almost burned. I stepped closer to him. He leaned in, a pathetic glimmer of hope sparking in his eyes, thinking my proximity meant forgiveness. "Listen to me very carefully, Declan," I said, my voice a quiet, venomous whisper. "In another lifetime, maybe I would have saved you. Maybe I would have let you bleed me dry until my heart literally stopped beating. But not this time. You are nothing to me but a dodged bullet." I stepped back, opening my designer umbrella. "Do not ever approach me again," I finalized, turning my back on him or my security team will forcibly remove you. I walked to my waiting black car, the heels of my Louboutins clicking sharply on the wet pavement. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. I knew exactly what was behind me. A broken, destitute man standing in the wreckage of his own hubris. I slid into the plush leather seat of the car, breathing in the scent of expensive upholstery and fresh rain. My phone buzzed with a calendar alert for a dinner date that evening with a charming, brilliantly successful architect who actually wanted me, not my bank accounts. I smiled, watching the city blur past the tinted window. Death had given me a second chance, but it was my own ruthlessness that gave me a life worth living. Talk about the ultimate poetic justice. Sophia didn't just dodge a bullet. She let Declan and Sienna build their own trap and handed them the lock. If you loved watching this entitled duo face the brutal reality of their choices, smash that like button and subscribe for more intense, revenge-filled storytelling. What was your favorite moment of Sophia's absolute savagery? Let me know in the comments below. Share this video with your fellow drama lovers, and stay tuned.